Valorant's a game that's been out for quite a while, and there are actually quite a few unwritten rules of Valorant that many wouldn't know from the outside looking in. But if you're doing these things and you don't know the unwritten rules, then you are throwing games and you most likely should get flamed. So let's break down the top unwritten rules of Valorant so you exactly know what not to do in your games. But first off, let's talk about an easy one. Stop running when your teammate is walking. This is probably one of the most frustrating things that can happen to you. You're sneaking up, you're trying to lurk a certain angle, you're trying to sneak up on the enemy where they don't expect you, and all of a sudden your teammates start to run. And then utility, ultimates, and maybe you just get one-tapped from an angle that an enemy wasn't even holding. Very frustrating when it happens, but make sure that you're not the one doing this yourself. It's a really easy one not to do, but it's a very frustrating one when it's done to you. So yeah, unwritten rule. Next off, as an unwritten rule, is calling someone 1 HP or one shot when they're really not. If someone calls to you and says, hey, this person's one shot, and you turn the corner and shoot them once and they don't die, and then you die, it doesn't really matter if you whiffed, it doesn't matter anything, because that person wasn't one shot. And I do think that generally it's just easier to just tell people exactly how much damage you did to somebody so they can make the call for themselves. But I really do think that a lot of people try to call things weak or one shot, mainly because it somehow softens your death. Oh, I didn't int, I got value. You just have to finish them off, right? But you probably didn't. But that's no worries, just make the right call after the fact so you don't get your teammates killed as well. Speaking of making the right call, SkillCapped is the best call you can make all freaking month, because we have in-depth mechanical courses on how to get god tier aim as quickly as possible, from warm-up drills to actual mechanical practice that will level you up, allowing you to hit headshot after headshot. So if you're tired of losing gunfights, check out skillcapped.com right now for a money back guarantee, as in if you don't climb, you don't pay, so there's nothing to lose. Check it out down below. Now, this is a really important unwritten rule that a lot of people do. It's when your team calls a rotate. You know, maybe you're in a game where not a lot of people are calming or whatever, but for whatever reason, there's a rotate calm because the entire enemy's there, there's tons of utility, and almost all of you rotate, but you or one of your teammates stays behind and lingers and then dies late, right? This happens on a ton of rotation calls at most elos in the game. But you know what? Valorant isn't Helldivers 2. You're not holding the freaking line. You can leave and go push another site. That's perfectly fine. And it's one thing if your team rotates and you're going to break off from your team and maybe cut off a rotation. That could be an actually decent play. But just staying on the point that you're at, just lurking there, trying to take a 50-50 gun duel, you're just throwing, man. You're just throwing. Now, let's talk about spraying through smokes, which could be a great thing. Spraying through smokes can clear the smoke, can deal damage to enemies on the other side. It's fantastic, but don't do it if your teammates are in it. If your teammate is trying to push through a smoke or crouched in a smoke, trying to hide through a smoke, and you start spraying through that smoke, guess what? They're going to spray back and kill your teammate, and it's going to be your freaking fault. Make sure that you're not killing your teammates by trying to spray for no reason at all. This is a really important one because it's one that a lot of people will do and not even think about it, but it can be the one that directly results in your teammates dying because you're just open firing through a smoke that they're trying to make a play through. The next up is about rotation, specifically not rotating like a psychopath or bunny hopping through a rotation. So many times someone will rotate off a site and they can't fathom an enemy lurking up or playing an angle that is cutting off their rotation, and they give up all their sound, they're hopping through, they're not clearing angles, and they die, their teammates die, everyone dies because someone just passes through an angle that an enemy is just chilling in. Keep in mind possibilities. If at any moment you don't understand certain amounts of information on the map, if there are gaps in your team's overall information on the map because people weren't playing there, enemies could be anywhere. Enemies could be lurked up, pushed up, in a corner, whatever. So you're going to have to re-clear that space. And yeah, of course, you can't clear everything always if you don't have a lot of time. But at the very least, be ready to fight. Don't bunny hop like nothing could ever be wrong and then just die for freaking free. The next unwritten rule in Valorant is leaving an angle when you have everything locked down as a team. You have every freaking angle locked down, you have the spike down or something similar, and you have basically what I would call an information lock, where enemies can't get onto site or anywhere near anybody without passing one of the people that are holding the access points onto site or the general area. and you just decide to leave. You just decide to push up, lurk somewhere else, and this is something that you do because you're antsy or whatever the case may be, but then an enemy lurks through that they shouldn't be able to lurk through. All of a sudden, 2 of your teammates die out of nowhere because they can't imagine someone being there because it shouldn't be possible because you're holding that angle, but you actually weren't. So recognize when you're doing a job and it might be stale, it might be boring, it might be stagnant, but it's important, and if you leave that and leave a gap for your team to die, it's your fault when they do. Now, one of the biggest unwritten rules of Valorant that I think pretty much everyone breaks for no reason at all is calming about random stuff after you died. You just died, and you're not giving a call out about a location. You're not talking about what HP they have. You're saying something like, the judge is so broken, why is this? And you go on a giant rant about the devs for like 30 seconds, and it has nothing to do with what's going on. Or you die and you start complaining about your teammate or whatever. And I'm not saying never complain about your teammate. You could do that from time to time, but don't do it in the middle of a round. Don't do it after you died and fed, of course. And make sure that when your team need comms, when your team needs sound to like actually clutch up the round and potentially win, try not to just clutter comms with random stuff to make you feel better or whatever you're doing it for. Now, a really big unwritten rule of Valorant is making sure that you're not afraid to swing your teammates when they die. If your teammate dies to something that's nearby, they die to an angle, someone hiding, swing them and challenge the person. Close out that duel and get the 2-for-1 trade. Don't see them die and be like, oh, nah, and just run away, back completely out. Oftentimes, you are just baiting your team. You're not closing in on a free kill. And I really do think that the #1 reason a lot of low-ranked players can't climb is that they back away from kills that would be free. Their team die, and they just don't commit to it, and they just bait and back away. If you commit to things, it is so much harder to get progressive kills after the first one, and you have perfect information about where they are, and you have swinger's advantage. Just swing the freaking angle, take the duel, and get the trade when your team die. But the last but certainly not least is typing to the enemy about how bad your teammates are. This is the one that happens a lot when you are on a team and maybe your team's underperforming for a little while. Someone on your team will type to the enemy team, or someone on the enemy team will type to your team about how bad their teammates are. And they're trying to fish for like agreements or something like that. The best thing that you can do is to mock these players. If you're on the other team, someone on the enemy team is talking bad about their own teammates, just mock them, make fun of them, be like, wait, you're the one that's been messing up, you're the one who's trolling. And I think this is a good way to keep these type of players in check, because we, at the end of the day, on the winning side or whatever, don't care. Like, don't complain to us. Like, who cares? So yeah, I think this is a really unwritten rule. It's an unwritten rule to not do this, and an unwritten rule to roast these players at all possible, because it's just funny. But are there any unwritten rules that you think we missed? Definitely let us know in the comments down below. And for everything else, if you want to climb, check out SkillCapped right now.